Good evening. I hope everybody can hear us. If somebody can just type in the message, the attendees, just to let me know that you can hear. Let's see. I see hi from Long Island. Anybody got a yes? Nothing yet?
Yeah, I'm only seeing hello from locations. I'm not seeing a yet. Oh, there we go.
No, there's
Okay, good. All right. I was starting to get scared. I'm like, oh, Lord, I got to fix Crowdcast. All right. Good evening. My name is Michelle Corbier, and I will be your presenter this evening for Sisters in Crime. Our webinar tonight will be Not Yet Published, How to Get There. Well, that's not the title, but that's what we're going to be talking about. So I want to thank our presenters here, and I'm going to give a little introduction for them in a minute. But first, I want to talk about Sisters in Crime is the only organization of its kind, an international society of writers, readers, agents, editors, publicists, librarians, bookstore owners, and other women and men who support our unique mission to promote the ongoing advancement, recognition, and professional development of women crime writers. To learn more about Sisters in Crime and the many ways we support our members across the globe and at the chapter level, please visit www.sistersincrime.org. Now, let's get to a few housekeeping measures. If you look up in your right upper corner, you will see the help. If you have any problems, try that. The first thing is to make sure, try to be on Crowdcast if you can. Check your browser. Google Chrome, Firefox, those are going to be the best ones. If you're having problems, the first thing to do is see if that's the issue. And just like the IT people always tell you, turn it off, turn it back on. That usually works. Log off and log back in. If you're having any other problems, you can click the Get Audio Video Help in the lower left corner of your browser. And then, of course, I told you about the help button. So those are the 3 tips. Now, if you want to ask a question, if you look in the center of your screen at the bottom, you'll see an Ask a Question. Please put your questions there, because at the end of our program, we will be giving those questions to our panelists, okay? And then, of course, on the side, please enjoy the comments with each other, sending messages back and forth. If we have any links or anything we want to share during the presentation, we'll put them in there. So, all right, let's get started, because we got a lot of good information from these women. So we're going to start. Our first presenter will be Mia Manansala, and she has spent decades as an English language instructor in a small town in South Korea, and then later in her hometown of Chicago. She has been a Pitch Wars mentor, and she has received her book coach certification from the Author Accelerator program. She works in the youth services department of her local library and writes the Tita Rosie's Kitchen Mystery series. And the first book in that series comes out May 4th this year from Berkeley Penguin Random House. And if you're not on her newsletter, she gives some good recipes. I'm just saying, okay? Then we have Miss Lourdes Venard here, and she's a freelance editor with more than 35 years of writing. I know that's wrong because you don't look like it's been 35 years, so that's just a typo. Writing and editing experience. She worked as a journalist at the Miami Herald, Chicago Tribune, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and Newsday. After journalism, she turned to editing manuscripts, specifically crime fiction, both developmental and copy editing. She worked with authors who won or placed as finalists in the Edgar Awards, Killer Nashville Silver Falcon Awards, Independent Publisher Book Awards, CWA Dagger Awards, and RWA Daphne du Maurier Award. For the past 7 years, she served as editor for the First Draft newsletter for the Sisters in Crime Guppy chapter, which is excellent. I get that all the time. So much information in there. She is an educator teaching copy editing at UC San Diego, I believe, and the Editorial Freelancers Association. And then we're supposed to have Terri Bischoff here, and I'm going to check in a minute to see if she's here, but I'm going to let you know about Sachiko Burton, who grew up in both Japan and US. She worked as a sensitivity reader for multiple authors, illustrators, and I love this, game designers. Who knew, right? Including Penguin, Asmodee, Abrams Books, Choice of Games, and HarperCollins. She also does developmental editing. She fosters kittens, works magic on the grill, and practices yoga. All right, so Miss Mia is going to start our program for us.
All right. So thank you so much for that very kind intro. And hello, everyone. So I am here to talk about book coaching. So if you're like me, you were like, what is book coaching? I've never heard of that. Honestly, I hadn't heard about it until last year, early last year, when so as Michelle said, I am part of an organization called Pitch Wars, where we mentor up and coming unagented writers. Um, Someone who ultimately we didn't choose as a mentee, but who was like one of our top choices, reached out and asked if I would be willing to be a book coach for her, and I didn't know what that was, and she had to explain to me what that meant. Um, so it sounded, right up my alley. I love helping writers make their story the best that they can possibly make it. I love helping them achieve their publishing dreams. So I did more research into it, and I saw that there was a certification course. And I thought, if I'm going to do this, I want to make sure I'm doing to the best of my ability as well, right? Because I realize it's so difficult, it's so scary to trust your story, with a stranger. um, these cost money, and I'm also very sorry. I'm also cognizant that there are so many people out there willing to prey on the dreams of writers who want more than anything for someone to acknowledge them, to get that agent, to get their manuscript published, and they're willing to just drain them of money, and that's not what I want, right? So essentially, a book coach is like, it, I'm a consultant, I'm a developmental editor, I'm your cheerleader, I'm your project manager, I'm your accountability buddy. um, and it really depends on what kind of service you want, because it ranges. Like, are you just looking for help in the query trenches? Then I can help you out with that. I can help you research agents. I can tell you how to build a list. I can tell you how to um, find one that fits you well. I can help you with your query letter, your opening pages, your synopsis, that kind of thing. If you just want a regular manuscript evaluation, I can do that as well. If you need help, let's say like you're very, very beginner, like you have this great idea and you've always wanted to write, but you don't know how to move forward. Or maybe you have moved forward and you get maybe 20 pages, 50 pages in, and then you're stuck and you don't know how to continue. You don't know how to reach the finish line. That's what book coaches are for, right? We help you build out the steps. We help you figure out how to go from point A to point B to point C and finish what you've started. Let's say you already have something and you've been getting lots of rejections, and something's wrong, and you need that outside help. You've revised it a million times, your critique partners have looked at it, but it's still missing something. I offer that as well, right? We have like revision packages where I read it, we break it down, I offer you weekly feedback, homework. We do like the kind of holistic package. So basically, I am what you need me to be. Right. I'm not your therapist, because there are some boundaries when it comes to that, because writing can be very personal. What gets on the page, your hopes and dreams, I get that. But I am here to encourage you. I am here to help make you the best writer you can be, right? It's not my story. I will never push my vision for you, my vision on you, because if you don't think it's right. But I am here to maybe tell you some tough truths, right? I'm what's known as a tough love kind of coach. I do sprinkle in so when I give you praise, it is very genuine, because I'm not here to like hold your hand and tell you how great you are, just, but um, I recognize that writing is hard. I recognize that writing is lonely. I recognize that maybe there are people in your life who don't get what it is that you're trying to do, because publishing is such a strange industry, and people who are not inside it maybe don't understand some of the hardships you're going through, right? That's when you want a coach, right? Because um, like a developmental editor is fantastic. They will be able to spot things um, that you never even dreamed of. But like that's what it is. They read it, they give you their feedback. Here's the edit letter. Good luck, right? And I'm here because I recognize maybe you need a little bit more than that. Maybe not necessarily holding your hand, but guiding you, helping you come up with the, like, how can you implement the feedback that you just received, that kind of thing. Um, so I'll drop a couple of links in there, because I also want to say, like, just like finding an agent, just like finding a publisher, I am not the right coach for everybody, right? You need to find the coach who is right for you. You need to find the coach who understands your story and vision. You need to find the coach um, who can push you and meet your needs, right? Not everyone wants a tough love coach, right? Like, I'm not here to make you cry. Like, that's not helping anybody. Um, so so I'm going to drop this in the chat right now. The Author Accelerator, where I got my certification, they do a free matching. So like, it doesn't cost you anything to fill that out if you're looking for a coach. But obviously, if you decide to move forward, that's when that's when you will discuss prices. And each coach is different. And I'm also going to post mine as well, just to give you an idea of the kind of services that I offer, why I do what I do, what I'm best for. Those of you who are doing your like super grisly, hard-hitting noir, I might not be the best person for you, right? I've read some, I can help you on a story path, but that's not where my passion is. So I think you can find a better coach. Those of you who are more traditional, cozy, humorous, PI, hit me up, maybe we'll be a good fit.
All right, thank you, Mia. That's good to know. And book coach, I don't think a lot of people know about the book coach, so that's important to know about. But now Miss Lourdes is going to share with us about what she offers with so much editing experience. I mean, Miami Herald and Chicago Tribune. Wow, that's big bucks,
Well, thank
big
you. Thank
boys.
you.
Yes.
First of all, hello to all my guppies out there. I know there are some of you out there. And I'll drop a link in later on to the Guppy website. So the Guppies is an online chapter, and it's always been online or virtual. And it's mostly for people who are beginning on their journey to publishing, although we also have a lot of published authors as well that you can learn a lot from. So if you haven't heard about them, please check them out. And I think it'll be a good fit for those of you who are starting out. So I want to talk a little bit about the different types of editors, because people are always confused. And even within the editing community, you'll find that the editors themselves are confused, or they use different terms, or they'll do different things under the same name. So I want to break that down a little bit first. You have a book coach, which is Mia, and that's sort of the first step if you're just beginning writing. Then comes developmental editing, and this is also sometimes called substantive editing. And in traditional publishing, this is the first step before you go on to copy editing. You do developmental editing. It looks at, sort of at the big picture issues in the book. So the big picture issues are the plot structure, the pacing, character development and voice, the structuring of scenes, whether the story is flowing well. In mysteries, you look at things as, whether you have enough red herrings, whether the murder comes early in the book, which publishing these days, wants to see the murder early on, whether the story is dragging too much in the beginning, whether you have enough clues, so that sort of thing. So a developmental editor will usually, what they do is they give you a critique letter. It can be a very long critique letter, and it goes into all these issues, points out what is missing, what you should do. Now, some developmental editors will also look at the manuscript and leave comments within the manuscript itself, but not all developmental editors do this. So if you hire someone, you should definitely ask, what is their process and how do they do things? So do that first. I've had people who have done copy editing first, and then they've gone back and done developmental editing, but it doesn't make sense because you're almost wasting your money, because then you have to pay for another round of copy editing. So you don't want to do that. You want to do the developmental editing first, and then if you want to do copy editing, then you do copy editing. And copy editing is looking at grammar, spelling, word usage, consistency in names, the timeline, and those sorts of details. Consistency in dialogue and point of view. Factual errors, and even in fiction, you can have factual errors. Like if you establish something as fact in chapter 1, it should still be the same fact in chapter 3. And copy editors also look at smooth, clear writing, but this is all things that you want to do after developmental editing. And finally, there's proofreading, and not everyone has a budget to hire all these people. And if you're going the traditional route, then you could leave the proofreading for the traditional publisher to do. But the proofreaders is not the same as copy editing. A lot of people get this mixed up. Proofreading is a very last step after all these things have been done, and it's just to catch the very last errors. And also, it's usually done in typeset form. So the book is already laid out, and you're also looking at the layout and the formatting, and if there's any issues with the formatting itself. So if you're looking to hire someone, make sure you use the correct term so both you and the editor are on the same page. Even if you're going into traditional publishing, you might want to do the developmental editing at least, and maybe also the copy editing. These days, and Terri might be able to talk more about this because she's also an acquiring editor, but these days, literary agents and publishers really want a manuscript that is as polished as it can be. There's so many people writing, they get so many submissions, that you want to rise to the top, and this is really almost what you have to do these days to get there. So I would really recommend that, even if you're going that route, hire at least a developmental editor, and they'll hopefully save you some grief. And I want to also go back to a point that Mia made, that she's not the book coach for everyone. So I may not be your developmental editor. I also have genres and subgenres that I especially like, sort of like same as Mia. I like traditional, I like cozies, I like private and investigator type stories. I like psychological suspense stories, but the really hard noir and that type of story, I've done them, I've edited them, but they're not really my passion. So you want to get an editor who's passionate and who's also well read in that subgenre, because they're going to know the conventions and what's trending in publishing, what's selling in publishing. So when you're looking for an editor, also ask them those questions. What have you edited? What do you like to read? Is this a subgenre that you like to edit? That's important. You want to have a connection with that editor. Because editing is, it can feel like you're critiquing someone. And so if that person is not really into what you're writing, it may come across as too blunt, or like they're not really interested, and maybe it's because they're not really interested. So it's a relationship, and you want to have a good relationship with that person. So, make sure you're looking for the right person that's a right fit. And I always suggest, looking at 2 or 3 people, and, get recommendations from different people in your critique group, other writers that, ask them, ask around, get recommendations, and, email those 3 or 4 people. Ask, some editors will do sample edits, so they'll, look at a chapter and, it's harder in developmental editing to give a sample edit, but they might still give you comments that will be helpful. And I think that's about it.
Actually, I had a developmental editor one time who caught that my book was set. It wasn't that far back. I didn't even know that I had an iPhone in my story, and there weren't iPhones in the year that I had my story. I'm like, who knows? We take things for granted that you need somebody else to check those things for you, because you're just writing your story, and this phone, of course the phone, was prominent in the story, and she's like, there were no iPhones then. It's like, oh.
Yeah, I say everyone needs an editor. Even editors need other editors, because I've written things and I'm so in my head that I'm not really seeing the flaws in my own writing. So everyone needs someone else.
And when I've looked for editors, I haven't ever had anyone tell me no. I've asked that I give them a couple pages so they show me how they edit. So, it's like you said, you can ask, definitely ask if they will give you a sample, because you want to make sure that they're going to give you the service that you want, and they can understand where you're coming from. So, all right. You see me looking behind the scenes because Terry's having some computer issues, so I'm trying to get her back on. So in the meantime, Sachiko is going to share with us about sensitivity readers, because this is something that I'm not going to say is big now, but something that is very relevant. It's always been relevant, but now it's like, you better do it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
Can everybody hear me okay? I always like to check. All right, we're good. Okay, so yeah, I'm Sachiko Burton. I'm Japanese American. I live in Washington State with my 7 kids. I do a lot of editing. I'm also the project manager for Salt and Sage Books Incomplete Guide series, which is really helpful for authors who just want to get a brief overview of what would be the most common issues in reading for a given marginalized identity. Like, we have one for writing Black characters, fat positivity, autism, and we're going to continue coming out with those. So let's talk about what a sensitivity reader is and isn't. A lot of people have the idea that a sensitivity reader is a censor, and we're not censors. We're not gatekeepers. We're not vending machines where you put in an editing fee and we spit out tidbits of cultural authenticity that you can stick in your novel so that it sounds like you're really this identity. Censors take information out so people can't see things. What sensitivity readers are expert readers. We add information so that you can create a better experience for those who read your book, where it's more authentic and it's kinder to the people that you're representing. So, I mean, just like if you wrote a book set in France, you would want somebody who is familiar with France and with the French language to read it over. If you had a scuba diving in your novel, you would want a scuba diver. It's just the same thing. So, what is a sensitivity read? Well, a lot of people do it a different way. The way I do it is you will figure out, the best rubric I've used is the more presence a given identity has in your story, the sooner you should have eyes on it. And who needs a sensitivity read? Everybody needs a sensitivity read. Even own voices. When I write Japanese American stuff, I have other people read my stuff who are also Japanese American, because no culture, no identity is a monolith. All autistic people have different experiences, disabled people, queer people. Like, for instance, I'm white passing Japanese. My brother looks very dark. He has been harassed by people in a way that I haven't been. So if I were to write something about growing up Japanese American in America, I would need somebody like my brother who has had those experiences to be able to add their perspective on what would be harmful, what would ring true, what wouldn't ring true, so that I could make sure that when people read it, especially the people who have had those experiences, they can go, oh my gosh, they're telling my story. That's me. And that's an amazing experience. And it's definitely what we want our readers to have. And it's never an admission of, I've noticed that a lot of people are very worried about sensitivity reading because they feel like this is an admission of ignorance, and that's not how it is. When people bring me something to read, I think, good for you. I am so happy that you showed up. I can't wait to help you. I can't wait to talk to you. This is not scary. It is not a scary thing, and it shouldn't have to be a scary thing. We are here to help. So when do you get a sensitivity read?
This is a great question. Sensitivity reading is a lot like developmental editing. The sooner you can get it in, the better. And that's because sensitivity issues, they run the gamut from macro to micro. Now, a micro issue would be something like accidentally leaving in like a racist slur. You know, and some people don't always know the words that are offensive, and that could be easily fixed in a line edit or that kind of development. But a lot of sensitivity issues, the vast majority, are in that developmental stage. A vast majority of sensitivity issues are actually, and don't take this personally because this is true for all of us, it's bad writing. A lot of sensitivity issues are when people substitute stereotypes for better character development, or for better character motivations, or for better setting or plot. An example of a macro level issue is years ago, I was reading for a person, I'll try to make this as impersonal because I want to be really kind and professional. I was reading for somebody who had created a story where they wanted, I'm trying, they wanted to have a Japanese title on the story, and they wanted the person to have some connection to Japanese culture because their agent had said, that's really popular right now. But they said, but the person's not really Japanese. Like this person, the character has lost their whole family and they don't speak the language and they don't know anybody who's Japanese. And it was just sort of casually said that, so this is now a Japanese story, but it's not. And the macro level issue with that is that that's gutting. You know, can you imagine losing your entire family, not knowing anybody? Anyway, so with that writer, the sooner that writer could have gotten that script to me, that story to me, the better, because then I could have helped that writer understand just how painful the idea was. So my two rules of thumb for sensitivity readers: early is always better. I love rough copy. I don't care about typos. I don't care about spelling errors. I don't even care about if you're not even sure where that character is going to go. The hardest part, especially when I'm working with game developers, is when somebody brings me in way too late in the process, when they're already deeply emotionally invested in the story. They want that character to maintain those stereotypes because otherwise the story will crumble. And in the case of things like game development, they've already paid people to do the art. And when I say, well, you know, this is actually not, this is harmful, this is problematic, it's very hard for them at that point in the process when they've already spent a lot of money and they're in time crunch to be able to fix the things that they need to fix so that they can be really inclusive to as many of their audiences as possible. So definitely bring people in as early as possible. Ask them. I've had people who have hired me and said, I just want to talk to you about this story idea I have. Do you think that's great. My ideal would be if somebody brings me in on the idea process, and then once it's pretty much finished, they're like, okay, I think I've got it. Then I could have another run through and say, okay, I think that, you know, this could use more help. This is great. Here's a good word to use here. That's my ideal. Now, does everybody have the money or the time for the ideal? No. So here are two things you can do. Number one, I'm not trying to do a shameless plug, but this is really a resource that we created with writers in mind. My company, Cotton Sage Books, we have created a line of incomplete guides. They're not huge. They're very, very small books. They're only $4 on Kindle each. You can get them and just see the top 10 most common issues that our editors run into. And this is all written by own voices, people who have come up with this. They've seen the same issues come up again and again in their edits. So it was very important to us to make sure that, especially for beginning writers, people who are really wanting to move towards either indie publishing or trad publishing, that they have an accessible resource that they can refer to, because that's a great way to launch off into more personal research, so that when you bring in a sensitivity reader, that it won't be elementary issues, that your money and your time are going to be spent and invested in a much better way, so that you can get to those more nitty-gritty, wonderful, juicy character details. The other thing you can do is always, if you are going to include a diverse character in your story, and please do, like, don't take any of this to mean that you shouldn't. Absolutely do. Let people see their faces and their hearts and stories. It is so powerful, and your readers will love you for it. And when you do, just ask yourself, what is it about this identity that is serving my story? What is it that I need this identity to say about my story? Like, is it that, because some people will bring in a Japanese American character because they want somebody complex. Other people will bring one in because they think, I want somebody who's really exotic and thin and pretty. And that's a harmful stereotype. So if you can discern what it is you need to have happen in that part of your story, is it that you need a character to do something? Is you need the plot to feel a certain way or accomplish a goal or tell some kind of a story? That is a really good way to see if, am I treating this identity as a crutch, where I'm as a way to not have to work on my craft, or am I really going to do this in a way where I'm honoring people and bringing in more stories? And the more we honor people, the better. And sensitivity readers, and if you bring that story in, and I just want to tell you again, because I know some people get scared, you bring that into a sensitivity reader, especially with the people I work with, because this is very important to us. We will be kind to you. People don't know what they don't know. That's true for all of us. It's true for me too. And so we just want to help people to be we want to do our best to help you to do your best. And so if you ever want to hire, I hire out freelance. There are a lot of freelancers out there, but it can be hard to find a sensitivity reader because it's sort of new to the industry, and also because there's an unfortunate tendency for them to get harassed and doxxed. It's sometimes not very safe because people, we're dealing with issues like people being queer, people being various ethnicities, and that's not always very safe. So if you can find various companies, and my company is just one of many, and you can find the company that works best with you. I work for Salt and Sage Books. And so if you were to work with a company like that, then you can come in and see who is available to be able to read for whatever identity that you've included into your story. So in the process, if somebody brings a sensitivity read to me, I will make inline comments in the manuscript. I'll write an edit letter, and I'll explain if something is harmful, I'll explain why, and I'll give you links to, here's where you can read more about this, and possibly sometimes maybe you could do this instead. And then there's always a return letter where you can say, okay, should I do it more like this? And I can say yes, or I can say, maybe more like this. Basically, it's supposed to be a collaborative process. It's intended to help everybody to just be kinder to each other.
And you also have the background of developmental editing also.
Yes. And it just fits together so beautifully, developmental editing and sensitivity reading, because we're just finding what are the problems in a story? How can we fix it? How can we make this work better? Because sensitivity reading is not just a boutique thing we do to be nice, although that is reason enough. When you get a sensitivity read, you find the flaws in your story that will help you to make a much better, stronger story with much more complexly motivated characters and better plot and more realistic settings. It creates a better story. It's a stronger manuscript. It's very valuable to do that.
Sorry, we're still working on Terri. I know some of you were hearing that noise feedback, but I didn't want to mute her, trying to see if we could at least get her on. So, because she has so much to offer. So she's trying to reconnect right now. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Terri. So she's a developmental editor with over 10 years of experience, specializing in crime fiction, LGBTQIA, and women's literature. She occasionally does YA and query letters. She has been an acquiring editor for over 10 years. In her prior position, she acquired and edited 36 to 40 books a year. Yes. Before entering publishing, she owned a mystery bookstore for 5 years, which I just love. That's like the dream. So, but she's trying to reconnect now, and I asked her if we can get her back on to share some of her information about acquisitions, which is what we all want to have someday. So, but she had shared with me when we were doing our practice session, her and Lourdes, this comment that's going to be my new mantra. And they were saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lourdes, they read to, what is it she said?
To the point of rejection or something like that.
They read to the point of rejection. And so that goes back to what everyone on this panel has been saying. You have to polish your product as much as possible before you put it out there. And I can't even remember. Terri said some insane number, like, I don't know, what did she say, Lord? She gets had 1,000 emails or something she was waiting for. I was like, good night. There are, okay, so Terri says she can hear me, but she can't see me. We're going to try this. All right, let's try this again. So there are a lot of people just like you who want to be published. And there's just so much out there that they can be picky. And so I believe what she was saying is she gets a submission and she reads it until she finds a reason to say no to it. You don't want to give anyone a reason to say no. So and so that's what these wonderful women are trying to tell us is, use the developmental editor, get a book coach, if nothing else, just to say, you know what, maybe look at this, maybe do this. It's another person in your corner to help you to put your project out there. Terri's still trying to connect, so I'm going to take us to some questions while we try to bring her up. So let's see. So, and anybody can answer this, whoever wants to. And several people have asked for websites. If you scroll up through the comments, because we've been putting websites on the whole time, people have been adding stuff. So if you're missing something, scroll up through the comments on the side and you'll probably find what you're looking for. Oh, yay, internet. All right, so Terri, I gave them the pitch. We're ready. Tell us about.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. Sorry about the connection woes. My other laptop literally just died on me. I'm a little scared about that. Yeah, I know, right? So I've been an acquiring editor for 12 years now. And I also do freelance developmental editing, book coaching, line edits, manuscript evaluations. I don't do copy edits. That's the only thing I don't do, essentially. From the perspective of an acquiring editor, you're absolutely right. I get so many submissions. All the editors do. And I do have well over 1,000 unread submissions where I haven't even actually looked at the query letter yet, because we get so many all the time. It's really absolutely insane. I think the pandemic has actually allowed people to submit more manuscripts than they have in the past, pulled the ones out of their drawer. So we are seeing really, really heavy submissions. And the point of telling you that is that when you send your manuscript out, you want it to be in the best possible shape to get in front of an editor or an agent, because we won't read past page 3 if there are issues with it. And that is simply, the voice isn't there, the writing isn't there. Or, in a Word document, you have all the squigglies underneath words and grammar issues. Don't send your manuscript out riddled with that. I mean, that's just a red flag that you're not treating your writing as a business, as a professional. So you want it to be the best that it can be. And how do you get it to be the best that it can be? You say you're a debut author. You don't have 10 books under your belt, you don't quite understand the process, that's when you hire professionals to help you out. I always tell people to use the resources that you have that are free first. Right. Get in a critique group, work with people. If you go to a conference and they offer a critique, sign up for that. So you're getting it in front of an agent or an editor or a multi-published author. Take those routes and then start submitting to agents. And if you're getting, I say submit to agents if you're looking for a new New York publishing house. If you're looking for small press, you often don't need to have an agent. But start sending it out and see if you get common rejections. So if you're hearing the same thing from 5 different agents, then that's something you need to work on. And that's when you might want to hire a professional to help you get past whatever that issue is. And it is, I think Mia had mentioned it, the right editor, the author-editor relationship, the author-agent relationship, those are all special relationships, and you need to cultivate the best one for you. There's no shame in signing with an agent, deciding it doesn't work out, cutting ties and finding a new one, because this is a person, both the agent and the editor, who's going to guide your career. So you really want to know that you can trust them, they know what they're talking about, and they're working in your best interest. I don't know what else you want me to talk about, Michelle. As an acquiring editor, like I said, as an acquiring editor.
Yeah. When you said the 1,000 pending emails, you hadn't read the queries. I was like, okay. So that people understand, because a lot of times out here in the Guppies or on some of the other sites, oh, I sent my query and I haven't heard back. They can at least send a message. Not when they got 1,000. You know, so it's not, don't take it personal.
Yeah. You know, right. And it's totally legit to send a follow-up email if it's been a while and you haven't heard, you know, but just be polite about it. Say, hey, remember, you know, I sent you my manuscript 2 months ago. We met at Sleuth Fest and you said you want to take a look at it. Just a reminder, just wondering where you are. And that's always being, you have to understand, we're always overloaded, agents as well. And we want to look at every book that comes in. It's just not physically possible to be able to do that. But always be kind and polite, because we're overworked. I'm sorry. I love my job. I read all the time, but I can only, you know, focus my eyeballs for so many hours a day.
Absolutely. So we're going to jump into questions, because there's just so much knowledge here from everyone. And if you haven't put your question in, at the bottom in the middle of the screen where it says ask a question, type your question in there, and I'm just going to go through them as they come through. So the first one I have is, where do you suggest writers search for editors for various stages, and what do you suggest for how to compare rates? Lourdes, you have any
Well, I would
ideas?
say,
Oh,
no, I was just going to say, you know, one thing to do is talk to your fellow writers, talk to your critique groups and folks, because almost all the freelance work I do is based on referral from authors I know or I've published in the past.
right. Sorry, Lourdes is having some technical issues there, so.
No.
You know, it wouldn't be a seminar if there weren't technical issues. So, Mia, what about looking for book coaches?
Oh, well, first I was going to say, for editors, that's when being part of organizations like the Guppies and Sisters in Crime is really helpful, because I've seen in the Guppy chats, people have been saying, like, you know, I wrote my first psychological suspense. Does anyone know a good editor who works? And I saw a bunch of replies, like it was something like suspense, and there were a bunch of replies, because like this, you know, being part of the community, that's how we all help each other. You know, it's oh, you know, I worked with this person. I'm not sure that they were right for my work. Oh, I worked with this person. They were great. You know, they were very flexible. They were very responsive. So yeah, like Terri was saying, like word of mouth helps a lot, but particularly if you're in the right groups and you can ask the right people.
Right. And you want to, and also think about your perspective, because you want to have someone who identifies with your voice. I know that I've been in critique groups, and I sent to one editor where she asked me what ashy means in DWB. And I was like, you know, it's not going to work. If I got to define all the Black slang, you know, we're not going to get anywhere in this book. You know, so keep that in mind too. You know, ask people who are writing what you're writing, like you said, psychological thriller, or, you know, if something cultural is very central to your story, you want to get someone who can address that issue, because that's going to be important for you. What are reasonable fees for various kinds of editors, developmental, copy, and proof editing?
One resource you can check is EFA. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, Readsy is another site.
So we got Readsy and EFA. What does EFA stand for?
I was going to say Readsy is a site. Yep.
Editorial Freelancers Association. They have a rates chart there. And Readsy also, somewhere in Readsy, they have also, they show how much it would cost to have your book developmental edit, you know, get a developmental edit, a copy edit, you know, formatting, all those things. So that's a good source too. And lots of editors have on their website prices. Some don't, some do. But definitely that's, you know, one question, don't be shy to ask the editor.
Absolutely. All right, next question. How can authors best research what is currently selling in their genre?
Well, Salt and Sage Books has a service where we will try to find thirsty categories on Kindle, and we'll see. There's a lot of ways. I don't know how much everybody knows about self-pub, but when you're doing indie pub, there are a lot of ways to see which categories have fewer books so that you can rise up higher. And it's like fantasy football for writers, basically. But they'll find out what's hot. You know, you can just check bestseller lists.
And there's also Publishers Marketplace. They have like a free email newsletter that they send out, and it shows what's been selling. And if you go to conferences, I really recommend that if you're serious about this, try to attend at least one conference, every year or every couple of years. And that'll give you also insight into what people are writing and what's selling.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Lourdes was saying, especially if you're querying with Publishers Marketplace. Unfortunately, when you're at the query stage and you're looking up information, it is paid. There's a monthly fee. But you can subscribe for a month, do all the research you need on the agents, because what it does is with agents and editors, it shows what they sold. So you can't just be like, I write mystery, I'm going to send it to every single mystery agent out there. Again, I write traditional. There are not, not everybody wants a cozy. If I'm sending it to someone who only wants, like I said, like hard hitting noir, or like, things that tackle the dark sides of our society, they're going to look at my submission and laugh. And I wasted my time, I wasted their time, and that's really unfortunate. So you can do really detailed research. Who are they? Who do they represent? How long have they been in the business? What kind of things are they selling? It's incomplete information because it's self-reported. So not every agent, spends every second writing up every single thing that they sell. Or same thing with editors. Terry's super busy. She's not just like, yes, this is how I'm spending all my time. But it is a good way to get an idea of what's selling, what they're buying, what they're representing.
I would also advise against, I would say, don't look to write to a trend. Books take 12 to 18 months to publish. So if you're trying to jump on a trend, it may be gone by the time your book makes its market.
So Christina and somebody else asked, Terri, what makes you stop reading since you like reading? What makes you stop reading? And are there common issues that make you stop?
It could be really any reason. I may not connect with the character or the voice. There's so many unwritten rules in crime fiction, right? Like you're supposed to have the dead body within 50 pages, things like that. And so there are some sort of something I'm looking for. And it's important to know the rules so you know if you can break it, right? So I don't mind if the corpse doesn't show up in 50 pages, especially if it's a debut because you're setting up your characters. Anyways, that's a little bit off track. So generally, it's the voice, it's writing style. It's just not like they bill it as a humorous mystery, and I find nothing funny in it at all. It's usually to the point where I lose interest for some reason. And that varies, and it's personal. If you submit to 5 different editors, if 5 different editors gave you a critique on your book, you'll probably get 75% of the same issues, but then the other 25% is what the editor likes themselves or their personal preference, because we do have different triggers or things that bother us. But not having a well-edited manuscript certainly is something I will ditch right at the beginning, because we're busy in publishing and we can't spend a whole lot of time and money fixing your manuscript. So the better shape it comes in, the better chance you have it will go forward in the process.
Someone asked a question. It seems like editorial expectation demands are, and I think she has 10 A's, way different from, say, 20 years ago. Can you comment on that? Is that true?
I would say that in publishing, as an acquiring editor, that we don't have as much time to develop an author as we used to. We used to be able to do many passes with an author to before the book goes into production. Nowadays, I do one pass, one set of revisions with the author usually. So I'm looking for a book that's pretty solid.
Yeah, and I'll add that I became friends with Anne Cleese many years ago. And, she's a British author who's written Vera, the Shetland series, and they've been made into series and all that TV series. And she has said that when she first started, which was, I don't know, over 30 years ago or something, her first books are not really that popular. And she said if she were publishing now, that she might not have achieved the success she's achieved now, because it took time, a lot of time, and the publishers really brought her along until she reached, that level of success that she has now. So, yeah.
And I think you
I
commented
do think
on
that
this.
publishers.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was going to go to the next question, but go on.
Okay. Oh, well, I was going to say that not only did publishers edit more in the past, but they also gave an author's sales numbers a bigger cushion right now. So it's all about money and the bottom line in publishing. It is a business. And so if your book isn't earning out quickly, you're not going to get the next book. Whereas in the past, publishers stayed with an author for longer, gave them more chance to succeed.
Yeah, that's a good point. Marion asked, if you do submit to or query, how long is a while to wait for a response? Because you were saying you can follow up. How long would you suggest?
I would suggest 2 months. I think 2 months is a good time frame to nudge the editor again.
Yeah,
And
most
then,
agents on their site will actually say, because it's unfortunate, because sometimes it'll be a lot of agents now are like, no response means no. But then sometimes you don't know whether they received it or not. So it can be like a really tricky territory with that. But most agencies that do respond will say in their website, like, if you don't receive a response within 6 weeks, please nudge. 2 months, I think, is probably closer. Like 6 weeks is being very generous, I think. But yeah, around that time.
Well, and this question actually probably for you, Miss Mia, is a book coach the best resource if you've received 5 rejections and none of the feedback is consistent? That's from Lillian.
I would think it could help, because you can because one of the hardest things in writing, especially when you're starting out, is knowing whose feedback to listen to, right? Because we I even said, like, oh, it's always good to have eyes on it, but let me, anytime you hear always and never, like, kind of take that with a grain of salt. It's a great idea to have outside eyes if they are the right ones, right? Like, my husband doesn't read. He definitely doesn't read cozy mystery. If he read mine, and I'm just like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, you don't know, like, of course I did that. That's like the convention. Like, yet, so like, not all feedback is good, useful, constructive feedback. So first of all, I would kind of sit with it and see like what resonates with you. Because it's easy to get very defensive because you're like, how dare you? This is a masterpiece. It's good, right? But if you take the time, if you sleep on it, some parts of it should resonate with you in some way. Because I think in some ways we kind of know when something's not working. And like having someone actually speak to it kind of like brings that up to you. If you are honestly, you have these 5 very different things, you have no idea what to do, then I think a book coach would be helpful because they can kind of talk these things over with you. Like, we have a little bit more time, like we have these consulting calls, we have a little more time to help you envision what you want your book or your series or your career to be like. I think it would be helpful in that way.
And so this goes towards sensitivity reading. What do you think are the most problematic issues that you see with folks writing own voices that makes them seem insensitive? And that's from Miss Diana.
Okay, great question. So thanks for bringing up own voices. So if for those who do not know, Hashtag own voices means that people are writing from their own experience. So for me, I would be writing about what it's like to grow up being Japanese American and diaspora in America. For other people, they write about their own experiences, which means you're writing from the place of your greatest expertise. What are the biggest problems? The number one problem would be, and this goes for everybody, including own voices, is thinking that you're a monolith. So, my experience is absolutely valid, but my experience is not the same as somebody who has grown up, who is currently living someplace where there's a big, vibrant Japanese American community. I don't have that. Other people do. We would have a different story. And so for me to write a story about that, I would need to get eyes on from somebody else who has that. Even if I were writing something and I needed somebody else with the same experience, it's just always a good idea to get other sets of eyes on what you write. It's always a good idea. It's never an admission of failure. It is a show of wisdom and strength to get more and more people looking at your stuff and finding what isn't working. I hope they answered your question. That's a good question.
Oh, yeah. Well, and this is a follow-up, so let's stay on that vein. As a person of mostly dominant cultural POV, I worry that all my books will just have white characters, or that the people of color or non-dominant POV will be stereotypical, or basically white dominant culture on the inside with a black face. I worry about that. Any suggestions to begin the journey to be more authentic? And that's from Miss Jennifer.
Oh, that is such a good question. And I love it. And this is what I love about that question. This is what I love, that that is a possibility and that's a real issue, and that you don't want that to happen. You are already halfway there. Knowing that that's an issue means that you're going to be able to train your eyes and to be able to do the research that you need in order to see, okay, what is the experience of other people who aren't me? And that means, and it's so important there's a lot of ways you can do research. Following people on Twitter, Googling, reading lots of books, but there is no substitute for getting to know community. If you are close enough to a community that they let you hold your children, then you're getting to know their hearts. You're getting to know that experience. And then, of course, having people read it, being able to hand it to people and say, I want so badly to not do any harm. I want so much to honor other experiences. Can you help me? As a sensitivity reader, when a client comes to me like that, I just want to hug the heck out of them, because that is the best. And that makes my whole day. That is a delight to work with. We sensitivity readers love helping people with that. It is wonderful.
Now, Eileen had a question, and it sounds more towards ageism. She says, I used to cover aging issues as a journalist. A geriatrician told me that 8-year-olds have more in common with each other than 80-year-olds. And so she was saying, seems to me that that would apply with sensitivity reading. So can you talk to like ageism?
Oh, yeah. I mean, ageism is absolutely a thing. I would definitely want to find somebody. You would definitely need to find somebody who lists themselves as somebody who can read for that issue. For instance, I read for being Japanese American. I also read for other experiences like trauma, PTSD, mother of a large family, things like that. So if you can find somebody who is qualified to speak to that, either because they have a background in gerontology or because they are older and they've experienced ageism and they've had time to unpack it and they know how to articulate it to you, yes, definitely go seek that out. Find any way you can to get a much fuller, more whole picture.
All right, so let me get the editors, and this is a question I have. So I love doing, I think I learn more from hosting these things than I'm supposed to, and I should be being a host. The question is, what is the difference between an acquiring editor and an agent?
Okay, sorry, couldn't get my mic fixed. So the difference between an acquiring editor and an agent. I'm sorry, did I talk over you, Lourdes?
No.
Okay, so an agent sells your book to the editor, to the publishing house. So think of it, your agent is your seller, your publishing house is the buyer. Eventually they turn into the seller to the customer along the way. But whenever you receive a contract for anything in the world, whoever is presenting you with that contract, written it in their best interest, not in your best interest. So your agent is going to go through that contract line by line and challenge the publisher on royalty rates, the amount of the advance, what rights are included or not included, will the rights revert back, what the author is identified from or not, what cost the publisher will take on. And so there are a lot of things in a contract. Most publishing contracts are 22 to 25 pages. And it's very legalese that most people don't understand and shouldn't understand. It's very specific. So an agent works for you to represent your book to the publisher. The acquiring editor, I will work with you on your manuscript. I will do all the content stuff, the creative stuff, and then I do the business stuff with your agent. And I actually, I also do books with unagented authors, but I prefer for them to have an agent to maintain that business relationship, so that if something on the business side goes wrong, your royalty statement didn't show up, whatever, I can deal with problems with the agent and still maintain my creative relationship with the author and not have that part compromised. Because really, as an editor, I have no sway over when the royalty statements come out. I don't know what the marketing budget is going to be. I don't get to make those decisions. Somebody else does. So that business part should stay out of the writer's life as much as possible, in my opinion.
All right, so we're at 6 o'clock, so I'm trying to get as much from the editors, because I know people love questions for the editors. Does the developmental editor point out just what's wrong, or do they also suggest how to correct those problems, such as logic holes?
I mean, I do. I suggest, how you could fix the problem. Every developmental editor is going to be different, which is why you should talk to them before you hire them and spend all your money. But yeah, I will try to give a solution. But I think Mia was the one who said it's a collaboration. And so I look at it as a collaboration. And even when I make suggestions, I say, this is your book. This is just my suggestion. You can take it or leave it. I'm not like some person imposing on you what you should do, but I do give suggestions.
Great. This was wonderful. You see, I've been taking notes, so I'm like trying to take notes, trying to keep you guys on the screen. So I deserve a cookie. So anybody have any other comments before we close out? Everybody good?
I'll actually piggyback on there. I think making suggestions for how to fix a problem, I think that's a key difference between a developmental edit and just a manuscript evaluation. If I'm going to evaluate a manuscript, I'll say X, Y, and Z aren't working. But if I'm doing a developmental edit, I'm going to say these are the ways that you can correct it, or ways to go down it. And one thing I would also want to get in before we end here is that you're going to come up with conflict quite a bit in the process. Like your acquiring editor might send you revision notes that will have 10 things on it, and you're like, pick the battles you want, right? So if you absolutely want your character to be a chef, then fight for that part. The rest of it is just extra fluffy stuff. You can't win every battle, so that's why you pick them, right? And put your foot down on what's important to you. You don't have to bend over and take anything that the publisher gives you. Stand up for yourself and say, no, this is what I want. And that's okay to do.
Yeah, this crowdcast is making me crazy with the things coming out. I'm about to have I'm just go in my eyes. This is wonderful. I want to thank you on behalf of Sisters in Crime and myself personally. You guys were excellent. Thank you for sticking with us. Mia Manansala, Sachiko Burton, Terri Bischoff, and Lourdes Venard. And thank you for putting up with my bad pronunciation, but that's my Mississippi Southernness. So for Sisters in Crime, we want to thank all our attendees. Before we wrap up, I just want to let you know that we have our next event on April 28th at 7 p.m. Eastern, podcasting. Who knew? A how-to on creating, publicizing, and maintaining an audience, which is always relevant. So I know I speak for all of you here in thanking our attendees. To everyone who joined us live, thank you also. We hope you enjoyed the presentation brought to you. Members of Sisters in Crime can view this webinar and a library of recorded webinars by visiting www.sistersincrime.org. You'll find them on the webinar archive pages. If you are not already a member of Sisters in Crime and want to join, click on the Join tab, where you can learn about benefits of membership and pay online. Learn about your Sister in Crime chapters, both local and online, under the Connect tab. And make sure to check out our YouTube channel, which is just awesome. So thank you all. Be safe. I hope you're going to be at BullshitCon. I can't wait to see everybody in person. Yay! So thank you guys. Thank you so
All right.
much. Be
See you
well.
all. Bye.
Bye-bye.